Hello friends, welcome to our Flutter course. Today we will continue building our app and discuss how to display our elements. Let's get started. First, we need to create a new file for a widget that will represent one item, specifically one user. This will be a stateless widget. Let's name it UserItem. This widget will have one field which will be of type UserModel and we'll pass it through the constructor. The field will be final since it won't change during the program's execution. Our widget will consist of a container. First, let's add padding to it. As we remember, this is done using edge insets. Let's also add a color, like gray. Now, as the child parameter, we will pass a column. Inside the column, we will display the user's name, email, and age as text. Let's start with the name. We can use our field and display the name property. Let's make the first text, the name, the largest and bold. Next, let's move on to the email. It's the same process, but this time we'll make it smaller and less bold using the font weight property. So now our container contains a column with two text elements. But let's enhance it. To the right of the name, we'll display the age. To do this, we can wrap our first text in a row and add a second text element with the age. However, we need to add some spacing between these elements. This can be done using the sized box widget. This widget takes parameters like width and height, and in this case we'll use the width parameter. The age text will also be smaller than the main text. So the two elements will be aligned in a row. Now let's try to use this widget. For this, where we return the widget in Future Builder, specifically where we check for data using hasData, instead of returning a simple text, we will return a ListView. We covered this in Lesson 39. We'll use the builder constructor, passing the builder parameter. As we remember, this parameter takes a function with two arguments, the context and the index. In this function, we need to return a widget representing a specific item from the list. Let's first create a variable of type UserModel, which we'll get from the list in snapshot.data. As we remember, we can safely use the exclamation mark since we are performing a check and are sure that the data will not be null. We access the element by index, which corresponds to the function's parameter. Then, we should return the widget we wrote, passing our variable into it. This way, the widget will display data for this specific user. Now, we need to pass the item count parameter, providing the length of our list. This is done using the length property. Let's restart the code. As you can see, we now have two elements displayed, but they don't look great. First, they only have inner padding, not outer padding. The issue is that we are using the padding parameter of the container, which adds padding only inside the container. To add padding outside the container, we need to wrap our container in a separate padding widget. This will give it external padding. Another issue is that the email is centered. To fix this and align it to the left, we need to use the cross-axis alignment parameter of column and set it to start. This tells Flutter that we want our elements to be aligned to the start of the cross-axis, which in this case is the horizontal axis. We can also make the color more transparent so it doesn't stand out too much. We can do this with any color using the with opacity method. This method takes a double value representing opacity from 0 to 1 and returns the color with the specified opacity. Let's pass the value 0.2 to make our container 20% opaque. Let's restart the code. As you can see, everything looks much nicer now. There is still one issue. When we add a user, we have to restart the app for the new user to appear. However, there's a way to make a repeat request to the server after a user is added. First, we need to convert our widget from stateless to stateful. This will allow us to use the setState method, which will redraw our screen. Let's call this method after the post request. Every time setState is called, the build method is called again. Because of this, the Future Builder widget is rebuilt, and our function to fetch data from the server is called again. Let's test the app. After creating a user and clicking Submit, you'll notice that a new request is made to the server, and the loading indicator is shown again. This happens because the future is called again, and initially it's in the waiting state while the request is being made. After the data is received, all elements, including the new user, are displayed on the screen. But did you notice a problem? The issue is that the age doesn't match the one we specified during creation. The problem is that we need to specify headers, specifically content type, in the post request. This header tells the server what format to interpret the data in. If not explicitly set, it defaults to text/plain. This doesn't suit us because we're sending data in JSON format. To tell the server that we need the JSON format, we pass that value. This is something to keep in mind. Now, let's restart the code and check the result. As you can see, this time the age matches the one we specified during creation. So, in this lesson, we covered how to create widgets and use them to display data from the server. With that, we've completed our simple example of using basic requests in an app. This was our first practical app, which is why it's so simple. In the future, we'll be building larger apps with more complex architecture. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next lesson.